Thank you so much, everyone, for being here. We have, like you have said, you have already said, we have been running a series of webinars, especially with our focus in AI in education. And yes, so what we are trying to do is we are trying to cover as much area or as much as AI in education, the impact with all the diversity in the education sector. So today we are looking at AI with a special focus in special educational needs and disabilities students, and so we assembled their teachers here, and we also believe there will be some students here who will be attending as well. There's the issue I get from one of the principals who had said she had 30 students who are disabled, is that when the schools are closed, like we closed last Friday, so yeah, just yesterday, all schools were closing yesterday, and those kids had to go home, and when they are at home, there's an issue accessing the internet, and so they are not able to log in. So these are some of the things that we should be considering next time we hold this type of a webinar. With that said, I would like to introduce the first speaker. Okay, Claudia, please introduce yourself and tell our attendees what you will be speaking on. I've lost so much with the loss of that phone. Thank you very much, everyone.
So welcome everybody. We are so excited to have you here. My name is Claudia Martin, and I am a business teacher for a secondary school internationally. And I also study a little bit or research a little bit of AI. So my personal motto really is to gather as much information as possible, and then to take that information and share knowledge with whoever would like to take that knowledge. So with that being said, I really hope that you all get something out of today's webinar. So when we think of AI, some of us think of this advanced robot, and some of us perhaps see what Elon Musk has recently brought out. In the beginning, when I first heard of AI personally, I was thinking more along the lines of something from iRobot, and it was quite scary in the beginning. So the truth is that we don't actually know what the future of AI holds for us. But what we do know is that as teachers, we can rather utilize our biggest tool, which is knowledge. So when we give ourselves the knowledge to handle this new technology, we're actually able to utilize it to our advantage. So before we begin or continue with today's session, I'd like to take a moment to just pause and chat about professional development. It is incredibly important as educators that we take our own learning and professional development beyond what our schools offer us. So we have many platforms available online, such as the Open University or TES, FutureLearn, K-12. These are all very, very popular, free platforms that educators can get valuable training from and even resources. I've personally believe that as educators, it's our responsibility to meet our students in their environment and not to make students meet us in our environment. So we all know that the environment has changed recently. So it is truly our responsibility to make sure that we're able to help our students with the environment that they're in. So please have a look in your spare time at professional development that you can do. Open University is a very popular choice. It is a very respected university that offers quality education at really no cost. So today, what I would like to share with everybody is what exactly could AI do for you? I would like to highlight about 5 areas in which you could potentially utilize AI that could help us meet our students' needs in a more engaging and personalized way. So we at this stage must have interacted with AI at some point or another, and we're still not really sure how to look at AI. Personally, I look at AI as this large body of information, and the more I'm able to communicate, the better the responses are, and therefore I can use those responses for my students. But what AI is definitely not, it's not magic, and it's not a quick fix. And I think this is a point that we must realize before we begin to utilize it. Otherwise, we're going to have a misconception of what it is doing and what it can do for us. So we must, when we're utilizing AI, do it in such a way that we're keeping in mind what our students need, what we need, as well as what the curriculum needs. So the truth is that as educators, we have many hats that we have to wear, and we are expected to do a lot of different tasks all at once. We can't possibly spend all of our time developing these detailed lesson plans and curriculum outlines, and then go and spend all of our time developing material that links to that intense breakdown. And then while we're developing the material, we also need to continuously assess and record what our students are doing and how they're doing. And then on top of that, we're expected to always communicate perfectly to all the stakeholders. And this really becomes a little bit too much sometimes. So AI could potentially help us in these avenues. However, we need to keep in the back of our minds that whenever we are utilizing AI, our first and foremost responsibility is to our students. So therefore, we have to think of them first and foremost. So if we have a look at the different types of challenges that we face, not just as educators, but as SEN educators, is that already our kids walk into our classrooms having their own issues or challenges that they need to overcome. Our SEN students, on the other hand, often have perhaps challenges that are even more pronounced than other learners. The students in your classrooms may be dealing with some social and emotional difficulties, whether that be navigating new peer relationships or external stresses that may come from things like pandemics or the family problems. Other students might be facing more learning difficulties, things like ADHD or dyslexia. This then creates a situation for us as educators to find ways to keep these students engaged. And this becomes quite tricky sometimes when we don't have the materials that we need. Other students in your classrooms might be facing physical and sensory impairments. And this can therefore affect what material we decide to use, but it also has a direct effect on how we pace through our curriculum. So depending on what the SEN students' challenges are, that obviously brings a new set of challenges to us over and above the challenges we already face as educators. So with all of this being said, I would say that one of our biggest problems that we face is having this limited access to resources, whether that's something like a cell phone or the internet, even basics like textbooks and worksheets. These are all things that add this extra challenge to our students in our classrooms. And at the end of the day, as educators, whether we should or shouldn't, we take that responsibility upon ourselves to bridge all these gaps so that our students can have a fulfilling educational journey that means something to them, full of experiences and personalization, and that's what we strive for. So how exactly can AI help us do all of this? As I mentioned earlier, I would like to just chat about 5 different ways in which AI could potentially integrate into our jobs. The first one that I would like to chat about is our planning and organization. Or before I begin, I'd like to say I'm going to give a very brief overview of all of these, so that you can maybe have a look at what catches your eye and then do more research into that particular aspect. But for today, we'll just do a really brief overview. So let's have a look at our planning and our organizing. At the beginning of the year, we all have that very heavy burden knowing that it's time for us to sit with the curriculum and develop certain types of pacing guides. Whether we call it a pacing guide or a term lead plan, we know that it is our responsibility to take that curriculum, have a look at all the content, the material, the assessments and projects, and we put it in pacing for the students. This often takes quite a lot of our time in order to structure this document. The truth is that even though it takes us a lot of time, and no matter how deeply we think about it, it's almost impossible for us to plan this whole curriculum with all the needs of our SEND students in mind, and then doing it to such a degree that it works perfectly. This is all really impossible. But what AI can help us with is that AI can help think about all those different needs that our students have and remind us as it's going through the curriculum and planning the curriculum with us. So AI will be able to help us create customized pacing guides for our students who have different challenges that they face in their academic journeys. So we could take our curriculum as well as our curriculum objectives, our school calendar, and even if we have student profiles, we can feed all of this information into AI and it can generate personalized pacing guides. Then that allows us to plan for those extra time that we need, whether it's for revision or additional scaffolding. Because AI will be able to have a look at our curriculum and say to us, hey, your dyslexic students will find these chapters very challenging. And this will then in turn give you the knowledge that you need to say, hey, I have to add an extra week or a lesson, whatnot, edit your planning according to, or not according, but with AI's recommendations in mind. Another thing that AI is amazing at is identifying certain topics or course material that your students may find difficult to understand or work through. Perhaps you have students with autism, and the AI software will be able to say your chapters 3 and chapters 8 in your textbook with these learning objectives, this will be quite challenging. Therefore, you can, again, invest your time in a better manner to rather tailor those sections to meet the needs of your students. Then the second thing that AI could help you with is your lesson plan and differentiation. This is by far the most popular use of AI among teachers. Once our yearly plan is pretty much sorted, this is the time where, as educators, we now zoom in on the specific chapters and subjects that we have to cover. So AI is able to help us come up with creative and unique lesson plans in matter of seconds that not only can align with your course material, the needs of your students, the learning objectives, but it does it at it does it so quickly that it allows us to, instead of spending our time writing out these lesson plans, we can now spend our time reading through the lesson plans and adding our expertise to that lesson. So AI is also able to help us ensure that once we have developed a lesson plan, that it does actually align with the objectives in our curriculum. So let's have a look at an example of a dyslexic student. AI will be able to say to you, all right, you have this chapter and you have 5 different student needs, and develop different lesson plans that all integrate nicely together, but has different types of activities or ways in which you can explain the content to those particular students. Next that I would like to chat to you about is how we can utilize AI for our communication and reporting. So even though communication isn't directly linked to what we do with our students in class, especially our SEND students, this is a very essential part of our students' success. If we are able to communicate clearly, concisely, and regularly with everybody, all the stakeholders involved with that particular student, obviously that student is going to receive tailored support. So the truth is that who's responsible for all this communication? Sometimes as educators, we feel it's the responsibility of admin. As admin, they feel it's the responsibility of educators, parents, etc. Right? So we can utilize AI to communicate with all the stakeholders in a timely and concise manner. We can give AI things like our progress data from students' past assessments. We can give them any kind of attendance records, behavioral reports, teacher notes for those of us who still do that. We can feed all of this to AI that we've collected throughout a period of time. And AI can then give suggestions to us about potential areas that could be challenging in the future, areas that are currently challenging and need certain kind of support. So with that being said, whether we need to communicate things like reports or emails, letters to parents, AI has the ability to help us save that mental energy that we put into sending emails or reports. I'm speaking for myself right now. The amount of time I write a report card, and it's usually only 4 sentences, the amount of time I write that report card and then erase it and rewrite it, erase it and rewrite it, only because I don't want each child's report to be exactly the same. I want my students to feel like they're special. So I spend a lot of time rewriting things that I don't need to rewrite. This is where AI can help us find these ways to say things in different manners, but also AI has this amazing way of giving us things to say when it's difficult to talk about. We all have come across those situations where we need to address sensitive topics, whether it's with the student themselves, with admin, or with the parents. So again, this is something that AI can help us word in a much better way. And that's something I personally have found AI to be useful with. So the fourth thing I'd like to chat to you about is assessment creation. If any of you are high school teachers, I think as soon as we see the word assessment, we get a little bit of PTSD, knowing that our students need such regular summative and formative assessments to be able to get them used to the exam settings, especially for their very final exams. Not only does it take a large amount of effort from us as educators to set up these papers, but we also have to mark and give feedback on the paper. If we're not doing that, that paper is pretty much useless to our students. This obviously takes up a lot of time, bearing in mind that this is something we do after revision, where revision also takes up quite a lot of time. So AI can actually step in and help us test our students in different manners. So the assessments are important. We have to give our students an opportunity to practice this because it will save us the heartache and the very difficult conversation of sitting down with the student when they've absolutely messed up an exam because they're nervous. And when we know our students know the work, it makes it even more frustrating. So it is very important that we give our students an opportunity to practice this skill. So with AI, we're able to create a large amount of tests using things like, let's say, multiple choice or fill in the gaps, short answers, and even project-based type assessments. The best part, I think, about AI's ability to help us set up these exams is also AI's ability to help us to mark these exams. So I just want to give a quick breakdown, a quick example. So you could give AI your course curriculum and the objectives and say to AI, I would like you to develop 4 different types of tests based on this content and objectives for these students. You could have a range of different student needs. This is the point of AI, is that it can cater to all the different needs, hopefully. So let's have a look at a few examples. If we have a student who may suffer from dyslexia, we could ask AI to create an exam or a test that's suited for this student. We know that dyslexic students often struggle with lots of words, as well as how the words look on the paper. AI can not only make the questions less wordy, but it can also utilize texts and fonts that are easier for dyslexic students to read. On top of that, it can also color code and highlight, make certain words in bold, that also allow our students to understand the question in a much easier manner. So beyond things like dyslexia, I think our biggest learning, well, I'm just going to say ADHD, I think, is something that we all have come into contact with. ADHD learners need extreme engagement as well as adaptive learning. ADHD students often struggle with confidence. So when it comes to testing, we need to start with very easy, basic questions and build up the difficulty so that these students can get confidence and continue the exam. With AI, I can now just give the exam paper to AI, and AI can restructure this exam paper for me, starting with really easy questions and slowly working its way up in difficulty and improving the student's chance of, succeeding in this exam. Furthermore, we can even utilize AI in our exam settings for visual students. We know that autistic students struggle with wordy, lengthy exams as well. They often receive visuals much better. I can give AI my exam paper, and it can suggest how I can edit the exam paper to include visuals, which can help my autistic students. Here you can see that both images were generated by AI, and so I don't even have to spend the time going on Canva and now finding or designing this little image that I can attach to my exam. Another thing that AI could do for our kids is if our students are or need rather audio enhancements, such as our visually impaired students, AI now has the ability to not only read the exam paper to our students, but also record and transcribe their responses, making marking much easier for us. Then the final tip I have for everyone today, which is my personal favorite AI use, is using AI to create student and educator guides. So using guides is something that I think we all do at some stage. And to create these guides, whether it's an exam guide or a chapter guide, it takes a lot of time and effort from us. With that being said, with the trends changing constantly and our student demographic changing constantly, we now are in a world where aesthetic and trend is really very important. So when I'm creating these study guides, it's not as simple as me just utilizing the same study guide next year, because like I say, the examples need to be adjusted to better suit the students in that classroom for that year. So today I would like to walk through just a quick example of how I utilize AI to create guides, whether it's for myself or for students. So I'm a business teacher, as I mentioned earlier. And business is a subject that contains a lot of jargon and business vocabulary. In order for my students to achieve well in their final exam, they need to be able to use this terminology effectively. In order for them to score AO4s, which is their evaluations, my students need to be able to lay their foundation knowledge using the terminology, apply that knowledge to the case study using the correct terminology, analyze it all together using the correct terminology, and only then are they able to make an evaluation. So as you can see, for my students, terminology and vocabulary really is important for them in order to score well in both their Year 12 and Year 13 business exams. To make this even more difficult, my students compose mostly of students who have English as a third language. This is making this vocabulary even more difficult for them to understand and utilize correctly. So, what do I do in order to bridge this crazy gap for my kids? What I like to do is I rely very much on my scheme of work, knowing that this is the bare minimum information my students need to get. I will give my scheme of work as well as the chapter to AI. Here's an example of where you can see the marketing strategy objectives as well as the marketing chapters. I feed the objectives in as well as the chapter, and I ask AI to identify all the vocabulary words that is in the chapter, all the vocabulary words that's in the chapter that links to the objectives, as well as any kind of vocabulary words that my children will be coming across while working through that chapter that they may not understand because they're actually ESL students being taught in English. It is incredible to me that AI is able to give this to me in really a matter of seconds, where now I am able to categorize these vocabulary words in the key definitions, the business terminology, and then the extra vocabulary words that they might struggle with. This allows me to obviously place extra emphasis on these vocabularies before we begin with the chapter. Therefore, the students have the foundational knowledge in order to understand the new knowledge that they will be receiving. So I just want to show you here. These lists to me personally are very invaluable because it gives my students the ability, or it gives them that extra support that they wouldn't have gotten necessarily because they're expected to just learn in English. I often feel that students who are not English home language have an extra disadvantage because even as educators, we often forget because we're so used to teaching in English and not realizing that for some of our students, school truly is the only place that they get an opportunity to speak and practice their English. So for me, I use this particular resource in a number of ways because it can get very boring for our kids to have to just look at a vocabulary list. Again, I utilize AI to give me ideas and examples of how I can creatively implement these vocabulary words into my classes. Sometimes I just create vocabulary flashcards where I have students pair up and ask each other vocabulary. Sometimes I develop board games where I have true, false, or ABC options, multiple choice options, where again, students can be grouped and ask each other. And sometimes even I use it for classroom decor and create cute little display posters and things that I can put up in my class, but it's also helping my students see these vocabulary words over and over again. So to me personally, AI has revolutionized how my children can bridge that small little gap, something as basic as just language. So beyond just the vocabulary, obviously AI has the ability to help us with many, many more guides. This could be something from a basic unit summary, where you take the whole entire chapter and give a basic brief summary of all the objectives that were met in that chapter. We could even go more into detail and produce the exact same chapter summary in intense, detailed description. I find that this is often helpful for my students who are missing work or missing school regularly due to other commitments, or some students who need continuous in-depth explanation again and again before they can grasp the concept. This obviously my kids love, because it's something they can take home and tackle when it best suits them. We can also then take AI and utilize it to take our chapters and create visual representations, whether it's mind maps or it's word clouds, so that our visual students can see how certain concepts are linking together. So the guides are endless. For educators, I have found AI to be quite useful when it comes to my teacher guides. Every now and then I come across an activity in my textbook where I have a look at what my teacher guide says and gives the breakdown of the answer, but I just don't understand, or I don't agree, and I just want more. I love giving AI these situations and saying to AI, what am I missing? Because what I'm missing is obviously going to translate into what my students miss. So AI is a great way also for us educators to get that extra kind of support when we have those questions that pop up throughout the year while we're working through the curriculum. So we have now briefly spoken about 5 different areas in which AI can help us as teachers. And the advantages are endless and they're incredible. However, I do want to just pause again and say that when we are utilizing AI, especially with our students and their particular needs, the very first thing we have to ensure is that it meets our curriculum needs. Our curriculum is our golden standard, and this is what we have to compare AI's outputs to. Secondly, we have to ensure that the output given to us by AI is appropriate for our students and keeps them safe. We need to ensure that what we're giving our kids is of quality and not just something that AI has spat out and we've saved time and we just move on. And then finally, I want to say that I believe it truly is our responsibility to guide AI's use with our students. We need to guide AI so that it supports and doesn't replace. So at the beginning, I said we don't actually know what AI is here for, but I believe that AI is not here to take over our classrooms. AI is something that we can utilize in order to provide better quality education, better support, more engagement and personalization to our students. So if we as educators can come together and utilize our professional expertise with AI, I truly believe that we can provide a more inclusive environment for our students. So I'd like to end off by saying thank you very much to everybody for listening to us, as well as having such an intense dedication to your students that you take your Saturday to listen. And I hope that from everything that we've spoken about, that you've picked up on something that can help you. And I was going to say, let's start with questions, but I think it would be better if everybody, all the speakers speak, and then we keep questions right till the end. So I just wanted to say thank you, everyone. I would like to introduce our next speaker. Mr. Graham will be presenting some very useful tips and explanations as to how you can now actually implement everything that we've spoken about.
What I'm going to talk about is how AI can be used really by your students, particularly those with SEND. Some practical tips, really. My name's Graham Hastings. I'm head of computing at a school in Cambridge, St John's College School in the UK. We use AI both as an admin assistant, but also in the classroom. Our children from the age of about 10 make extensive use of AI via a system that we've set up within the school. So we don't let them free on ChatGPT. We have our own version, which is filtered and monitored. But also it speaks to them in an appropriate language. So if they're age 10, then it talks to them like a 10-year-old child. Now, I'm not an expert in AI. I'm not a SEND expert. I'm just a practical classroom teacher who's self-taught. And what I'm going to do is just share some of the things that I've learned and that I use with my pupils in the classroom. And we do have quite a number of SEND children, and so some of these things are particularly appropriate for them to help them to access our curriculum. But it should be noted that although the focus is on SEND pupils, all of the tools that I'm going to demonstrate will benefit every child. So they should be thought of really as just widely available for all children to enhance their learning. The artificial intelligence has made an astonishing impact in education, and in just 2 years since ChatGPT first appeared in schools, as AI continues to develop, it's poised to completely transform the way schools teach and students learn. And this transformation holds particular promise for learners with special educational needs and disabilities, offering unprecedented opportunities to bridge the gap in educational outcomes. It is realistic to predict that AI-driven applications designed to support SEND learners will significantly level the playing field, providing them with educational opportunities on par with their non-SEND peers. So that's the promise of AI. And what I particularly like about AI is it can act as a personal learning assistant. So generative AI is far more than just a research tool. While it can be used like a simple search engine, the sophisticated algorithms behind these applications make it much more like a guide, helping users navigate and engage with the information they seek. AI functions as a personal learning assistant because it allows your students to have a dynamic, interactive conversation with the system. When a learner asks a question, they can engage with the chatbot to clarify, explore, or request a simpler or a more detailed explanation if needed. And then the more they practice, the more adept they become at using AI to enhance their learning. So I'll show you an example. So here we've got an example. If I was visiting Kenya to walk in the highlands and I wanted to know what clothing to take with me, I could ask GPT, is it hot in Kenya? And I get back the not very helpful response is, Kenya experiences varying temperatures ranging between 16 and 32 degrees Celsius. So we've clearly got to improve the prompt. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this prompt, copy the prompt. So from now on, I'll probably just do this in edit view. So this is my improved question. And if I then go to ChatGPT, so I'm going to now switch to ChatGPT. And if you've not used it before, it's a very, very simple utility. Once you've got an account with ChatGPT, it's free. This is what you see. And the prompt is a question. So what we have to do is we have to get information and advice from ChatGPT by asking it a question. So it says, what can I help you with? And in here, I'm going to paste my prompt. So my question. And I've said, tell me about the weather and climate conditions in the highlands of Kenya and the appropriate clothing and equipment to take for a walking holiday. And then I just click on the arrow to run that. And then ChatGPT gives me the information I want. And you can see that this is quite extensive. And so as a learner, I might not want this information. So I then just edit my prompt a little bit and say, that's a little bit too detailed. Can you give me a summary of that? And you can already begin to see how the learner has an AI assistant who they can engage with and talk to and interrogate. And this makes it an an amazing tool for pupils, particularly pupils who may be more isolated at home, not have access to school or to a teacher. There are a lot of existing accessibility tools that have been around for a long time. Things like Google Assistant, Siri, Alexa, etc. And these are mainly aimed at hands-free speech-operated control. The advantages they brought to those with mobility and eyesight disabilities, for example, are obvious. Now, in schools, a growing number of computer applications that make use of AI to greatly enhance computer-based learning. And some of these applications particularly useful for SEND learners. If your pupils have a mobile phone or computer, make sure that all of the appropriate accessibility settings are activated on their devices. So if you just do a kind of search on the device for accessibility settings, you'll find that there's an awful lot already on the mobile phone or the computer for your students to use. Text-to-speech is an obvious example. If you search for free of charge text-to-speech applications, in reality, most will only be free if you're happy to settle with a limited version without many of the features and capabilities of the paid-for application. But these free trial versions can still be extremely useful, and they may be all you need. A simple app to get your pupils started with text-to-speech is Natural Reader. There's no need to create an account or a sign-in. If you just follow the link below, so I'll do that now. And we're now looking at Natural Reader. I'm going to just clear the text. So this is what you see when you go to Natural Reader. So it looks a bit like a blank page, but you've got a prompt here, and I'm just going to type some text in, and then I ask it to read it to me. And I don't know if you'll be able to hear it as it reads.
If you search for free TDS applications, in reality, most will only be free if you are happy to use a limited version without many of the features and capabilities of the paid-for application. If you have limited funds, these free trial versions can still be extremely useful. A very simple one to get your pupils and
So you get the idea. So text-to-speech is an amazingly powerful tool that's available free for everybody. Speech-to-text, sort of the opposite of text-to-speech. If you ask ChatGPT how to use speech-to-text on an iPhone or an Android phone, it will provide you with detailed instructions. And so if you set Google Chrome as your browser and create a free Google account, you'll have access to a whole suite of excellent, simple to use productivity tools, which includes speech-to-text and a screen magnifier. That can be extremely useful for children who have visual impairments. Google's produced a comprehensive set of free and easy to understand tutorials that will teach your pupils how to make use of their wide range of free Google applications. Google Translate is another one for children learning in a second language. Google Translate is a fantastic help, provides quick, simple, surprisingly accurate translations in a vast number of different languages. You simply set the language you're translating from and the language you wish to translate into, and then copy or paste the text in and watch the translation happen. And for most common languages, Google Translate also offers speech-to-text and to-speech and text-to-speech within its applications. Now, if you ask me as a teacher, what's my favorite teaching application, I would say YouTube every time, particularly with its send support features. So you can set subtitles on or off. You can ask it to auto-translate, and you can also change font size and the font to make the subtitles easier to read. Transcriptions can be obtained from most videos, and with the transcription, you can then create support documents to go alongside the video. You can create little tests on the video. Once you've got the text of the video, then you can create a lot of teaching resources to go with that video. So for accessing some of those things, I can just skip to YouTube and demonstrate that. And I've already asked for a video. We're doing classification with our children today, and so I've asked them to watch this YouTube video. And so what I've done is I want this video to translate for me. So I've set up the language. So with the tools built into YouTube, I can switch captions on and off. And I also can then set the speech, the translation. We've got a lot of settings here that we can use. So it's worth just experimenting with these. These captions, you can now see, are changing it from English to Southern Sotho. Sorry, excuse my pronunciation. So you can probably see the captions underneath. And as I play it, I think I've got the sound turned off, but let's try putting the sound on.
Characteristics. The two largest groups of animals are vertebrates and invertebrates. Invertebrates are animals that do not have backbones. Most of the animals in the world are invertebrates.
So there's a video with captions with real-time translation. If I now go down the information,
of invertebrates are
so there's more information. If you scroll down on YouTube, there's more information. So there's sort of description about the video. But the one thing I want to show you is if you scroll even further down, you get transcript. And if I click on show transcription, what I can see here is the text transcription of the video. I don't need to have the timeline here. In fact, if I'm going to copy the text, then I'll probably want to toggle the timestamps off, and then I can copy the entire text of the video, and then I can use that to create supporting documents, other translations. I can then use text to speech to get it to read back to the student. So you can begin to see how you can use these tools, you can put them together, you can mix and match and do amazing things with them with very little effort. So the next thing, well, I've already talked about how we can combine YouTube once we've got the transcript with other things, and we can combine it with ChatGPT. So having copied the transcript, as I said, I can translate it into a pupil's first language. I can make summary notes using ChatGPT. I can even ask ChatGPT to take that text and make a more detailed explanation of the topic than that given in the video. If it's too superficial, I could say, can expand on this. I could produce a vocabulary list, create a multiple choice test to help pupils to revise. So in order to get GPT to do that, I've listed some of the prompts that you might want to put into ChatGPT, and then having given it the prompt, if you then paste in the text, it will create what you've asked it for. Marking your own work. There was a question about marking a little bit earlier. Marking essays, large blocks of text, is still something that we probably wouldn't advocate, but you can use the marking potential of ChatGPT as a guide to the pupils. So if your pupils or students, your learners, have written an essay, rather than use ChatGPT for marking, you can use it to help them to improve it. So you could, for example, show your student how to put in a simple prompt, suggest how the grammar and punctuation, for example, can be improved in this text. So if that's a particular weakness of theirs, then they would enter that prompt and paste in their work, run the AI, and it will identify where grammar and punctuation can be improved. If you wish to use AI to help you with your work, the work you're handing in for grading as a learner, I must advise you that first, ask your teacher's permission, and second, explain to your teacher how it has helped you with your work. Ethics is a big question around the use of AI in schools and colleges and universities, and I think we may touch on that later. Learners with visual impairment, and we've already touched on text-to-speech, speech-to-text, the magnifier utilities. Using AI, learners with blindness can even create pictures, diagrams, illustrations, and graphs. And here's a nice example. So I think we've mentioned Canva. My pupils love using Canva. It's a picture creating AI. So I'm going to ask Canva to create a birthday card for my brother, who's obsessed with tropical islands, pirates, and whales. So if I now copy this prompt here, okay, and then if I skip to Canva, another free application, and so this is Canva. You probably begin to see a sort of similarity with a lot of these things. There's somewhere to paste in. So there's already a prompt in there. I'm just going to clear that. And I've pasted in the prompt I copied from my presentation. So it says, a whale broaching as it swims into a tropical bay. What else? While a pirate ship sails out to sea. So that's a card that would really appeal to my brother. So let's see what we get. And normally Canva will give you a few options, so you can just pick the one that you like best. Because it's graphics, it takes a while to do so, but there's its first suggestion, second suggestion. Now, obviously, if I was blind, I couldn't see these, but I could pick on one, maybe with some help of somebody, and then we could print that out and send it as a card. So it's quite amazing, really, when you look that these pictures have been generated from just that small amount of text. Actually, I took a screenshot of one of the pictures, just as an example. If you can think logically and are good at maths, you might be considering a career as a computer programmer. AI is making programming so much easier as it can write code for you. However, you still need to be able to design good software. But asking AI to generate the basic code leaves time for you to master more advanced techniques. So I'll give you a demonstration of that. I've got a program I need written, so I'm going to copy that prompt. And I'm going to go back to ChatGPT. And here we are back in ChatGPT. And I'm going to paste in the prompt. Write me a program in Python. That's a particular programming language, a very common, probably the most popular programming language used in schools today. And it says, here's a Python program to generate a list of 20 random numbers between 1 and 100, sort them in ascending order, and identify the prime numbers from the list. So there's the code. It's written the program for me. What's really nice about this, if your students are learning to code, is that you get an explanation. You get the code is commented, but also you get an explanation of the code and how it works. But then I can also say to ChatGPT, run this program, because I want to check that it works. And ChatGPT will now run that Python code, and it's taking a little bit of time analyzing it, and then I get the output. Here are some numbers from the program, and these are the random numbers it selected, sorted into numerical order, and the prime numbers are listed there. So that's a program that would have taken me maybe 15-20 minutes to write, and there it's written in seconds, and it's working perfectly. The next one is a bias warning. Now, generative AI models are trained on large amounts of text data from the internet, but this reflects the biases, stereotypes, and cultural norms present in societies around the world. So if certain perspectives, voices, or groups are underrepresented in this data, the model may not learn about them effectively, leading to unintentional favoritism or stereotyping. Some of this bias can be mitigated with carefully worded prompts. So you could ask for something from, say, an African perspective rather than a North American perspective, for example. But little can be done to change the underlying data, certainly in the short term. Keep looking and keep learning. We have only just scratched the surface here with some simple practical tips to get you started. But the world of AI does not stand still. Things are changing on an almost daily basis. If you cannot find the software you need right now, it might be available next month. So keep looking and researching recent AI developments for SEND. This is an excellent example. It's something which appeared in social media just yesterday, and I've given a link to the creator because you might want to follow this up. But this appeared, I had no knowledge of this until it popped into social media. And this is work that's been going on for probably a couple of years. And now it's been published. And this is particularly aimed, as she said, for autistic and ADHD learners. And this is the sort of sophisticated end of what AI is already doing to support SEND pupils. And so it is well worth watching. And finally, a list of AI tools for teachers, some of the things I've used and a few others. And the big three: ChatGPT, Copilot from Microsoft. If you've got Windows machines, Copilot is built into the latest versions of their operating system, and Gemini is Google's version of ChatGPT. So I hope that's been useful, and you can have some fun with that, and you can show some of those tips to your learners to help them in the future. Thank you very much for listening. So can we just say over to you, Karen?
Yes.
Okay.
So everybody, I'm Karen. I'm a teacher. I've taught from grade R all the way through to grade 11. I've never taught matric. And I play with technology. So I've been researching and working and looking at tech. And today what I'm going to show you is we're going to talk about things that have been touched on, and some of the things that the presenters already have said, I'm going to just elaborate a bit further on. So looking at bias and things like that. So if we think about artificial intelligence, it's not actually, what's happening here now? It's not actually really new. So where do we begin? Artificial intelligence was first actually thought of in 1950 when Alan Turing presented his paper, which was called Computing Machinery and Intelligence. And they were working on these really huge computers, like you can see in the picture. And they started thinking about, so will these computers one day be able to think? But the actual words artificial intelligence were first coined by John McCarthy at this Dartmouth workshop, which was a group of academics that got together. And there they were discussing how these machines could learn. And he coined the word. So artificial intelligence is a very wide, overarching type of smart computing. And within that, you've got a field of machine learning. So you can see you get artificial intelligence that's outside the block, and you get artificial intelligence that's your machine learning. And within that, you've got another subfield called deep learning. And then you've got large language models, and you've got generative AI. And these two are types of artificial intelligence that are deep learning things. I want to show you this little video.
AI helps people
about
with their
AI.
personal lives, jobs, transportation, education, health, and more, maybe even without them realizing it. Here are some examples of AI in action on a typical day. In the morning, a teenager wakes up and uses facial recognition to unlock her phone. She scrolls through social media feeds to see what's new. Then she asks the voice assistant on her phone what the weather is going to be like that day so she knows how to dress for school. A college student uses an app on his phone to deposit a birthday check from his grandmother. He takes a photo of the check, and the app automatically reads the handwriting to figure out the amount. It then deposits it into his account. Meanwhile, a younger student uses a different app that is teaching her a new language. The app listens to what she says and can recognize what she's saying even if she makes mistakes. The app then gives her personalized feedback on her pronunciation. At the same time, a person gets in their car to go to work, and the navigation system plans the fastest route based on current traffic. In the car, they listen to a music streaming service, which already knows what types of songs they like based on what they listened to before. When a factory worker arrives at her job, she sees that, as usual, humans and robots are both assembling cars. The robots do some of the more dangerous or repetitive tasks, like welding or painting. AI helps the robots recognize the tools they need to pick up or check parts to make sure they have been cut exactly right. When the cars are completed, computers help manage inventory and plan efficient shipping routes to deliver them around the world. Now, meet a farmer who's checking on her crops. She notices that some of her plants look unhealthy. She pulls out her smartphone and uses an app to take a photo of the leaves. The app can detect crop disease and also identify harmful insects. The app identifies the problem and recommends treatment. A surgeon is using AI to help make a medical diagnosis for a patient, and then a robot helps her perform a successful surgery. Afterwards, she goes to visit patients in a nursing home, where robots gently lift seniors in and out of bed and help them move around. In the meantime, a traveler needs to book a flight to another city. An automated customer service chatbot helps him book his ticket on the phone. Once he's on board, autopilot flies the plane for much of the flight. AI is even used in space. On the International Space Station, an astronaut talks to a free-floating robot that helps with chores and does jobs that are risky for humans. Now that you've learned about how other people use AI every day, think about how you use it. Spend a few minutes thinking about this question. What are 3 ways?
So just think about how you use artificial intelligence, and perhaps this has given you some ideas of how the AI could be used. So when we think about AI, it's collecting a wide range of data. So the data might be biometrics, which are your fingerprints. So if you open your phone with your fingerprint or your face, that's biometrics. It might be numbers or images, audio or text. And so if you think about that, you use all of those kinds of things within a school space. But there are lots of different kinds of artificial intelligence. You get interactive AI, which are your chatbots or your personal assistants, and you've heard about some of those today. You've heard about text recognition and speech to text, your visual AI, which is computer vision, or augmented or virtual reality, or functional AI, which is your Internet of Things or your robots, and analytic AI, which is your sentiment analysis and risk assessment. If we think about SEND, we've heard about some technologies today. But from a visual point of view, there are a very wide range. So you've got from AI-powered screen readers, you've got apps that can detect color and object for people and describe it. You've got navigation apps, which will actually speak to them and actually help them to navigate. Louis Voice is a wonderful app designed by an Indian gentleman in India, where he's made an app so he can actually now call, he's blind, and his developer team that he's hired works with him. And he's developed this app where he can call an Uber or order food or start a message, all with voice. So no typing involved. And he speaks about how it changed his life. Then you've got a range of hearing impairment tools. So Graham already spoke about Google. Google's also got ones around live captioning that you can actually speak to your phone and it'll action a whole lot of different things in a range of different ways. You've got sound recognition apps. So if you have hearing impairment, it will warn you if things are happening, if your alarm's going off, or if the smoke detector's working, or chatterbots, especially for parents who are deaf, and it will interpret the sounds that their babies are making that they won't be able to hear, or AI-powered hearing aids, which are then customized to you. So the AI then works with the hearing aids to customize it for the individual even more so. And then you've got a range of mobility type tools. So we've already spoken about the smart assistants like Siri and Alexa. But if you've never used your Google Assistant, so if you just go into your Google search and you look at your phone, let me just go to the screen so I can see what I'm showing you. If you go in and you see the little voice button over there, you've got voice, or you've got the image. So you've got speech and lens inside of your phone. If you click on the square one, on the lens, it'll take a photo of what you're wanting and interpret it. And there you can actually have your children discussing work and homework and helping with work. But you can also just talk and answer, as Graham was demonstrating. And then you've got your different AI-powered wheelchairs, which actually customize for the individual. They control the app on the phone, and the movement is controlled completely by the individual. And then you've got exoskeletons with artificial intelligence, which are these things strapped to the people. You can see it strapped to the two different ladies. And what it does is it slowly develops, helps the people with their posture for people who've had strokes or have had spinal injuries or neurological accidents and perhaps have lost their movement. And then you've got cognitive differently abled apps as well. So you've got things like Predictable that can help you with communication if you can't speak well. Or you've got the personalized learning. You've already seen how to use the general tools, and then there's specialized tools that you can use as well, like Newton. And you've got AI-powered memory aids. So this Rosie 2 is a little device, like you can see. So for older people or people who don't have memory, and you can put messages on it, then the AI will remind people of things happening. So these things are around us and how we use them. You've learned about the language models today, and large language models are just get that name because of the large amounts of data. We've spoken about a range of these types of ones. Your generative AI then takes that, and it also includes images and music and code. And examples there, for me, my favorite one is Leonardo. You saw Graham using Canva. And then you've got in video, which actually makes videos for you also from prompts. And DALL-E is the one related to ChatGPT. And all of these things are created by prompts. Many of them are text, but lots of the new ones you can actually speak the prompts to now too, that you don't just have to type it. Quick one that I want to play is Google's Odd One Out. If you've never hopped into Google Arts and Culture, go and look at this website. I love it. But they have a range of different interactive games and tools that you can play with your students. So I'd like you to quickly unmute yourselves. And when I play this game, you've got to tell me which one is the AI generated image. Are you ready? Please unmute and shout out. So you'll see it makes 4. Which one? Say left, right, or wherever. So 3, 2, 1. Tell me where to click. Where must I click? So say, no, that's wrong. We got that one. So you can be using this kind of tool to show your children how AI generated images sometimes don't even look AI. And so sharing with your students becomes a fun kind of way to engage with them and show them how the technology could work or influence them. So think about fun ways to engage with your students in a meaningful way and teach them about what artificial intelligence is. This is just one quick example. So why should schools embrace artificial intelligence technologies? Well, you've heard a range of different reasons today, but think about that children are using these tools, and many of them are using it without their parents or their teachers' knowledge. And so if we as teachers are not using these tools, then we are disadvantaging our children. So for example, Common Sense is an American study. But if I listen to what they've said, I'm seeing exactly the same thing here in South Africa. So they described in their findings, and this is from September, that young people are quickly understanding the potential of generative AI platforms, but they don't always understand the pitfalls, which really then underscores the need for adults to talk to them. So how are you talking to your children about artificial intelligence? We really need them to understand their experiences and discuss the good and the bad around bias and around inaccuracy. Remember, artificial intelligence is just a tool. It makes mistakes. And so we really need to think about that. So how are children using it? They use it for schoolwork and homework, for example, for models or generating responses to their prompts. There may be an over-reliance. So how are we as teachers asking the questions that our children are not necessarily overly relying on artificial intelligence? They're using it to create essays and responses. This may be seen as plagiarism. They're using it to study languages. So for example, practice speaking and writing. They are also using it to promote creativity. So blended database insights with new ideas. That's what we want our children to use it for, to analyze information and draw conclusions and then verify that themselves is really important. So what their study found was that 37% of the parents whose children had reported they were using the AI thought their children might be using it, but they never had the discussion. 49% of them had said they'd never spoken to their children about AI. That 60% of the children said that the schools had no rules about generative AI. And that 83% of the parents said that their schools had never spoken to them about artificial intelligence. So think about your schools and why you need to actually be talking about it. The things I'm seeing here from a South African point of view, and I don't think Lesotho would be very different, is that the children who are using AI are from a range of socioeconomic groups. If they've got older brothers and sisters or young parents, if the parents are using it, they'll be using it. So we really need to think about it. So why do we need to address and use AI in schools? We want our schools to be relevant. The technology is not going away. The learners are using it, and we want to be future focused. We want our lessons to be learner focused. Listen to the wonderful examples both Claudia and Graham shared. So we need to upskill our learners in artificial intelligence. We need to teach learners about how to use artificial intelligence, and we need to teach them how to use it responsibly. We also want to remain sustainable, both as teachers and as our organizations. So how are we using the technology to enhance our operational efficiency? How are we optimizing the resources to help with management? And how are we promoting sustainable practices within this? There are also lots of concerns that teachers have. The first one is the potential loss of human touch, where we're already seeing that schools that use a lot of devices, children actually don't talk much to each other, that they're all focused on their phones. And so schools here in South Africa are actually getting children to lock their phones away at break so that they'll actually socialize and share. We've got to think about the limited social and emotional support that we see of students. The technology may not understand the nuance and the context. So, for example, sarcasm or humor or the cultural references. And so we really need to be aware of that. We need to consider the ethical considerations. Data privacy and security Is the learner data collected by the AI tools raising concerns about privacy? So we should never be throwing our children's names and details into these tools. We should use a format which is anonymous, so we're not actually putting it out, especially if we're using something like ChatGPT or an open area space that's not within your domain. We really need to be aware of that. We need to think about bias. So AI bias can actually perpetuate the bias that's already there, which can lead to more discrimination within that space. And then we've got to think about the digital divide. The unequal access to AI tools can further exaggerate and the disparities that we are seeing. So we need to think about that from a teaching point of view. Practical challenges also include cost. When you add AI to your school tools, that can cost a lot of money, even if it's WhatsApp AI. So think carefully about just clicking on an AI tool. Make sure that you've looked at the pricing and how you're using it. That teacher training and adaptation is really important. That the technology may be unreliable, and so the teachers become irritated because now they feel it's taking more time to create these things. So getting to use the tools and understand them becomes very important. And then there might be pedagogical concerns. So an overdependence and a stifling of creativity. So learners relying too heavily on artificial intelligence, for example, with grammar correction or text generation. Or, for example, it might hinder the development of independent thinking and creative use. So we really need to think about how we are using the tools. And then we need to really think about focus on form over meaning. The AI's emphasis may be on technical accuracy and may overshadow communication or self-expression or the deeper purposes. And there also might be a potential for misuse. So the tools may be used for cheating or plagiarism if we haven't taught our students how to use them responsibly. But there are also benefits. You've seen some of those today. So automated grading, and great one to start if you've never done that, is using a Google form, switching it on to the auto grading feature there, and it automatically marks your work. Lesson plan assistance you've heard about, the differentiated instruction and the personalized learning you've seen. The enhanced feedback that you can get. So giving students information about detailed error analysis, looking at formative assessment insights so that your students can learn from the practice. And the individualized examples you've seen today, and the expanded learning opportunities. So the immersive environments, access to authentic and real world data, and expanded practice beyond your classroom. So don't think of it as a closed space. Think of it from an open point of view, but just be wary. Think about that AI will never replace us as teachers. We create the expertise, the knowledge, and the creativity. The AI tool should be seen as your helpful assistant that can enhance and enrich your teaching and the learning experiences for your students. So if we now think about that, we need to be aware of AI ethics. So the UNESCO has this fantastic document, and I've just realized that I didn't put the links into the chat. Let me quickly paste it. So there are a couple of links that you can grab off this document that are notes in here. And if you haven't shared haven't filled in the form today for attendance, please do so. That's how you're going to get your certificate. But UNESCO has developed this really cool document which talks about ethics and AI. And the four main principles it's built on are good humanity, individuals, society, and the environment. And when you read them, it's what we really want in the world: human rights and human dignity, respect and protection and promotion of human rights. That's what you want for everybody, isn't it? Living in a peaceful, just, and interconnected society. So understanding each other, being kind to each other, ensuring diversity and inclusiveness, that everybody feels welcome and that everybody's respected for who they are. And the environment and socioeconomic systems flourishing. That's what we want in our world. And so these are the suggestions that they're saying to AI developers: you need to build these into what you're doing. There are about 10 more of these points in the document. Go and read them. It's really, really interesting. But what do we need to consider as a school with regards to that? So first of all, we need to think about digital literacy and critical thinking. We need to equip our students with skills to navigate the digital world critically. So identifying misinformation, understanding online risks, responsible online behavior. We want AI collaboration and not replacement. The AI should be seen as a tool to enhance the learning and not replace the teacher. So we need to foster human-centered approaches where AI complements the educators and personalized learning of our students. And we want to look at the mental health and well-being within the space. We need to address the potential negative impacts of the technology from a mental health point of view, like cyberbullying or screen addiction. And we want to look at strategies promoting healthy online habits and responsible technology use. And so these are the kinds of discussions we need to be having with our students. And these are definitely the kinds of discussions that we must be having within our classes. So we need to think about, how do we start with education and awareness? Well, first of all, we need to include all our teachers, not just some. We also need to be talking to our learners and finding out what they are doing, and the greater community. We need to be saying to parents, you need to be aware of this and that your students are using it and what is responsible. We need to have a transparent and fair AI use practice within our schools. So what does that mean? We need to be transparent about how we will be using AI in our classrooms. Are we using it for grading or personalized learning? And if we are, the children and the parents need to know about this as well. We need to be aware of the data and the privacy. So your school needs to have really robust policies regarding student data collection and the usage of AI systems. You need to know where is the data going and how is it being used. And so the students and the parents should be informed about these practices. I wrote a blog a while ago about this that gives you some more ideas which you can explore. But schools should really support the educators and the learners to become AI literate. We need to adapt teaching and assessment to incorporate the ethical use of AI and to support equal access. We need to ensure academic rigor and integrity is upheld, that students are not just submitting an AI submission and we're just marking it and saying, oh, this is 80%. But we know that, oh, it's a little bit better than usual, so maybe it wasn't the child's work. So having those meaningful discussions becomes really important. We need to work collaboratively to share best practices as technology and its applications in education and the way it's evolving. We also need to be aware of AI bias. So you heard Graham speaking about that. So what is AI bias? Bias is where the machine learning or the algorithm reflects or perpetuates the human bias that was within a particular society, including historical or current. And it's what the data it's used that's been trained on. So there are a range of different biases. The one might be availability bias, that because of the data is from a small group of people that only has access to that group, it's now shared with everybody, and there's the assumption that everybody is that same information. So we need to be aware of where our data is coming from. There may be a confirmation bias. For example, the data that it's trained on looks at the existing beliefs and ignores research around other beliefs. There may be a contextual bias. So, for example, the model may struggle to understand or interpret your context or your information because of the information it's being provided. And so, therefore, the answer you receive is incorrect. Or there may be training data bias. For example, the data that's trained, for example, if it's facial recognition, if the training space has only been white people, it may create errors in attempting facial recognition of people of color. Or there may be algorithmic bias. For example, it may assume the bias that everybody's in there, the income or vocab may be unintentional discrimination because of what it's been trained on. Or cognitive bias, that the cognitive behavior may favor the data of perhaps Americans or Europeans, where the data is being carried from, and it might then assume that everybody in the world is like that. And so we need to be aware that there are these biases. From an African point of view, there is data bias. So the first thing is that there is a digital divide within Africa. And because of that, if we look at the amount of data that's produced globally, the amount we produce in Africa is very, very small. And so therefore the influence on the data, even if it's included, might be seen or not seen well by the training. And so that could lead to a potential bias. And because of this lack of data, there is more bias against us from an African point of view. And we need to be aware of that when we are using these prompting tools that you saw today being demonstrated. So I'm a South African. So you could, yours would say from Lesotho. So as a South African teacher using AI, or as an African teacher, you would describe your context. So you would tell it you are from Lesotho. You would tell it where you live. You would describe your learners by race and gender, that the AI learns, the AI that you are learning learns what your students are like. So you can put that into your prompt or your description. So you saw Graham grabbing prompts. So you write your little description on another space, not in the AI tool. Plan what you're wanting to say, and then grab that and paste it into the tool and use it. And then take that answer out and analyze it and read it carefully and check, is it valid? Is it fair? Remember, AI has been created to please us as humans. So it will give you an answer that it thinks you want. Some of the newer ones tell you now, I don't know enough about that. But sometimes they still make exceptions around that. And by putting this information in, we are actually helping to remove some of that bias, as you saw in the point that Graham made. We are actually teaching the AI about Africa. So don't forget to put in your context within that space. We also need to be aware of the ethics and the attitudes. So we need to use AI responsibly. We need to get involved and aware in discussions about AI development and the usage. We need to be polite when using artificial intelligence. Think of it as you are teaching AI. So when you're putting a comment in, whatever it is, you are actually feeding information in, even if it's a really small amount. So we want AI to know that not everybody is impolite. Not everybody is only interested in the negative things. So be polite when you're using artificial intelligence. You never know if that AI will one day be put into those Android robots, and then take part into the engagements. So how should schools implement it within their spaces? So think of it as how it involves your teaching. We really need our children to have an understanding of base knowledge. I think more so than ever now, because we really want our children to be able to have discussions with artificial intelligence around higher order thinking and middle order thinking. So we need to think about, how are we teaching differently? We need to build higher order thinking skills with our learners. And the AI might be used to assist us in doing that. We need to think about what's going home for homework, and how are we marking it? And how are we sure whether artificial intelligence has been used or hasn't been used? Or if it is being used, how are we marking that? Are we looking at the prompts that the children have put in, and are we evaluating that? Are we looking at the information that they've got back from the AI and how they've interpreted it and analyzed it and saying, wow, this was really cool, because they're thinking about it and not just accepting the artificial intelligence. But more than ever, we need to know our learners. We need to know their abilities so that we can actually help them and create these personalized learning spaces for them. For me, somebody that I really, really admire is Seymour Papert. Seymour Papert was a South African who was born in 1928, and he developed or worked with Mervyn Minsky, and they developed the artificial intelligence lab in Boston. So most of his life was not lived here. But if you know Logo, the programming language, in the 1960s and 70s, he was already saying children need to use computers within that space. And he developed a study called constructionism, not constructivism, constructionism. And here he talks about how you want an educational environment where learners build meaningful knowledge artifacts by taking advantage of the technologies all around them. His three main focuses of study throughout his life were artificial intelligence, the development of the child, and technological advancement. And so if you think about that, he saw artificial intelligence as this really powerful tool to facilitate and enhance thinking within our students. So think about how you can be using that. And today you've just got some examples. And so this is not a new theory, as I started off by saying. It's something which we really consciously need to be aware of. So we need to empower and equip ourselves. We should be equipped to support our learners using it. We need to inspire active learning to allow practice and healthy struggle. We need to manage cognitive load within the space. We need to adapt to the learners, and we need to simulate curiosity with our children. And we really need to deepen metacognition in terms of how our learners reflect on what they are learning within that space. So we need to encourage critical and creative thinking within our students, and not just look at the knowledge and recall base, but actually getting our students to really grow in terms of that. And so if you're going to do this, you really need a school artificial intelligence policy. Your policy needs to be informed as to how you will use the technology to support learning and curiosity. It needs to be inclusive, making sure learners are respectful of others and see the value of differing viewpoints. It needs to be balanced. So you need to practice teaching technology use with other activities and recognize digital activities. It needs to be engaged to use technology to make learners and school communities better. And it needs to be alert to practice principles of online safety and create safe spaces for them. So considerations you need to think about is define the scope and purpose in relation to your learners, their abilities, differences, and ages, to your staff, and to your existing school policies. It shouldn't sit outside your school policy. It should be part of that. We need to address privacy and security. It must align to your government Privacy Act. So in South Africa, we've got the POPI Act. I'm not sure what you have in Lesotho, but it must align to that to ensure your learners' data is truly protected. And whatever platform you are using, find out about how it is. You need to describe ethical guidelines, and you need to use artificial intelligence in the classroom responsibly, remembering being polite. Create an environment for continuous learning about artificial intelligence, benefits, limitations, and risks. So you want teachers to access the tools, and you want to talk about it. You want to create a space where people are encouraged to share what they're doing and learn from each other. You want to promote the evaluation of these tools. Talk about which ones work and which ones didn't, and which ones are really great. So within your school community, everybody's on the same page and can be learning from each other. You want to provide a space where evaluations are then reported on, and they can be accessed by all staff members. You want to ensure an inclusive and accessible AI support for learners so that everybody gets looked at from an individual point of view. So the other thing you need to remember is that this policy isn't like your other policies. It really needs to be updated regularly, at least once a year, if not more, because the technology is changing so very, very fast. So is your school ready? I've created this little Google form, which actually, when you complete it, you get a report. It looks at the strategic planning of your school. It looks at leadership and their AI usage, staff development, ethics and AI, your data decision-driven making, your AI resources for your learners, parent and community engagement, and AI policy existence. It's in the notes if you'd like to explore. So going back to what Papit said, how are you using these tools to create a space where children are building meaningful knowledge through artifacts that they've made within that space? So we need to think of artificial intelligence ethically in schools, driving effective change. So start with the education and awareness in artificial intelligence. Look at transparency and fairness of the use. Look at privacy and data protection. Look at digital literacy and critical thinking. Look at the human in collaboration and not replacement. Where is the human in the loop that you are using? And then think about mental health and well-being in this digital age. So as teachers, we should remember that the AI tool is our support, not our replacement, that it's there to provide meaningful context, build relationships, and foster creative expression. The world has changed. Inspire yourself and your learners. Explore tech and have fun. Thanks, everyone.
I thank you very much, Dr. Karen. I enjoyed that a lot. I found that very insightful and a very great way to explain to other educators how to start looking at ethics. Because sorry to just interject you, I just believe that as educators, especially as the younger generation of educators, sometimes it's really challenging to identify what I'm supposed to be looking out for, because I don't have that years of experience to just automatically know. So this is a brilliant way for educators to look at the different avenues and apply the correct thinking to those avenues to ensure that we are implementing it safely. Thank you.
I'm not sure what to say. That's kind, Claudia. Thank you. Peter, it's over to you.
All right. Thanks so much, everyone. Can you hear me? Oh, thanks. Oh, thanks. I think before we wrap up, we had promised people to ask questions at the end of the session, right?
Yes.
All right. I suppose that we will get questions on the next part of this webinar series, because I think we have mentioned that this is a two-part series, and we'll be having the next one in early January. So I believe people will have enough courage then, or maybe enough questions then. People are just tired because schools have recently closed. I would love for those people who came in who didn't register to register. There's a link in the charts so that they can have their attendance certificates. With that said, there's also some information in there in case. I think it's these presentations that we have just made, right?
Yes.
All right. Oh, there's just so much invaluable information in there. All right. Yeah, I would like to express my gratitude to everyone who was here today. It was a hectic time for me, but we have made it. I'm so grateful that we are able to record this so that people can be able to access it. And for those who were not able to be here today for some various reasons, they will still be able to watch this and get to connect with us, so that going into the second webinar, they would have gone through this one as well. This was a very enlightening session for me. Yes, I had some issues, but I learned a lot through this session, more than I've been able to learn on my own. And I'm very grateful. I hope it goes for everyone else here. There's just so much that was being, there's just so much value that was being provided. I would like to go through each presenter, and I'm not going to sum up anything you said, but I would like to say that, Claudia, you shared some very valuable insights into this integration of AI into our education systems, and we are really struggling in my country to get people to realize the importance of all this. If I have to waste your time, I will tell you that I've met with the Minister of Education. I've met with Krem, knows all this stuff. I've organized meetings with district education managers, with Krem, the principal secretaries of education, but nobody seems to be picking up on this stuff. But I believe if we keep on knocking at that door, people will certainly realize the importance. I wish everybody could have been here. These people in government could have attended this and heard what Karen was presenting on, heard how much passion was in this webinar. Thank you so much to Krem for that demonstration you did on these AI applications, because we have to see this stuff in motion. We have to see so that we know that it works. We have to see it in motion, and you always do that in these presentations. And I'm very pleased. I'm very happy with that. All right. Now, our attendees. I'm very pleased that you are here. I hope everybody else could be able to get someone to get involved in this in the near future, because this is for our education systems, for the education of the generations to come, and for such countries like my country, the third world country. We need this technology to kind of do those to be able to do those quantum leaps into the future. Because if you keep on taking this traditional route, we are never going to get anywhere. And I'm so happy. I hope I didn't keep everybody too long. I know that we had said we are just going to take 90 minutes, but we did go beyond that because the passion in here was just too much.